A wife is publicly humiliated by her husband's mistress at a lavish family party. The mistress, believing she's won, mocks the wife for being poor, for being less than, for blending into the wallpaper. She thinks she's about to take the wife's life, her husband, and the grand family mansion. But she didn't know the old, quiet father-in-law, the patriarch watching from the head of the table, had a secret he'd kept for 5 years, a secret that was about to turn the entire party upside down and hand ultimate power to the last person anyone expected. This is a story of the ultimate karmic justice. Hawthorne Estate was not a house, it was a statement, a sprawling, granite and ivy behemoth overlooking the misty, grey-blue waters of the New England coastline. It had been in the Vance family for 4 generations, a testament to old money and unshakable power. For Emilia Vance, it was a prison. It was a cold, echoing reminder of everything she was not. She was Emilia Middleton before this, a librarian from a small town in Oregon, a woman who found beauty in quiet things, the smell of old books, the warmth of a coffee mug, the kindness of a stranger. Then she met Jason Vance. He was magnetic, charming, and seemed to float above the trivialities of normal life. Their romance was a whirlwind, and she, naive and starstruck, had been swept into his orbit, believing his promises of a life she'd only read about in novels. 5 years later, the gilding had worn off. The man she married was a hollow shell, obsessed with image, status, and, most of all, the legacy he was set to inherit. That legacy was Hawthorne Estate. Tonight was the epicenter of the family's social calendar, Andrew Vance's 70th birthday. Andrew, the patriarch, was a man of few words and an intimidating, assessing gaze. He was the one person in the family Emilia felt a flicker of respect from, though he remained as distant and unknowable as the ocean below. Emilia stood in front of the full-length mirror in her and Jason's cavernous bedroom. The room, decorated in dark mahoganies and heavy brocades, felt more like a museum exhibit than a home. Her dress was simple, a tasteful navy blue sheath. She had bought it on sale at a small boutique, and she'd felt good in it, until Jason walked in. He was adjusting the cuffs of his bespoke Tom Ford suit, his reflection preening. "You're wearing that?" he asked, his tone not even bothering to mask the disdain. Emilia's shoulders instinctively tensed. "I thought it was elegant." "It's beige, Emilia. Not in color, in spirit. It's safe. My father is turning 70. The entire board of Vance Industries will be downstairs. My sister is flying in from Paris. And you look like you're about to catalogue books at the local library." "It's what I could afford, Jason," she said, her voice quiet. Jason kept their finances separate, a move his lawyers had called prudent. She received an allowance, a word that made her skin crawl, and it was barely enough to maintain the pretense of being a Vance. "Precisely." He walked up behind her, his cologne, a sharp, spicy scent like sandalwood and arrogance, filling her senses. He didn't touch her. "You just don't get it, do you? Tonight is important. Dad is expected to make the announcement about the estate, about me." "The announcement?" Emilia turned. "The succession, Emilia. The passing of the torch. He's finally handing over the keys to the kingdom. Hawthorne, the business, all of it. This party is my coronation. I need a queen, not a librarian." He said the word librarian like it was a terminal illness. The pain was sharp, but familiar. She had become an expert at swallowing it. I'll put on the diamond earrings your mother left." "Fine," he snapped, checking his Patek Philippe watch. And try to mingle. Don't just hide behind the curtains like you usually do. People are watching." He strode out of the room, leaving her alone with her inadequate reflection. She looked at the woman in the mirror. Her eyes were tired. The spark that Jason had supposedly fallen in love with was gone, extinguished by years of being told she was not enough, not rich enough, not sophisticated enough, not ruthless enough. Downstairs, the low hum of the orchestra had already begun. She could hear the clinking of champagne glasses and the artificial, high-pitched laughter of the 1%. She took a deep breath, clutching the cold metal of the doorknob. She was about to step into the arena. She had no idea that tonight, the lions weren't just circling. They were about to be unleashed. And she was the bait. The great hall of Hawthorne Estate was designed to intimidate. 30-foot ceilings, ancestral portraits staring down with judgmental eyes, and a fireplace large enough to roast a bull. It was filled with people who moved with the easy, predatory grace of those who had never known a day of want. Emilia found a spot near a large fern, her curtain for the evening. She nursed a single glass of sparkling water, watching. There was Jason's sister, Victoria, holding court by the piano. Victoria was all sharp angles and sharper words, dressed in something black and architectural that probably cost more than Emilia's car. Victoria had never forgiven her brother for marrying the help. Jason was in his element, gliding through the crowd, his laughter booming, a politician working the room. He was a different man in public, the charming, golden heir. Emilia watched him and felt a profound, aching loneliness. Then, a shift. The valet, a young man named Ben, looked flustered at the door. A car had arrived, bypassing the designated parking. A low-slung, cherry-red Ferrari screamed to a halt on the gravel, its engine a vulgar roar that silenced the string quartet. The driver's door opened, and a long, tanned leg emerged, followed by a woman poured into a red Valentino silk dress. It was a dress designed to be noticed, to be envied, to be the only thing in the room. Emilia's stomach dropped. She knew this woman. Her name was Chloe Donovan. She was the daughter of a new money tech billionaire, a social media influencer whose entire life was a performance of manufactured luxury. And for the past 6 months, Emilia had suspected, no, she had known, that Chloe was having an affair with her husband. She had seen the texts, the client dinners that lasted until 3 a.m., the scent of an unfamiliar, cloyingly sweet perfume on his shirts. Chloe sauntered in, not as a guest, but as a conqueror. She handed her wrap to a staff member without looking at them. Her eyes scanned the room, bypassing everyone until they landed on Jason. She smiled, a slow, possessive smirk. Jason, to his credit, looked momentarily panicked. This was not part of the plan, but Chloe, ever the predator, didn't approach him. She found Victoria, and the two women embraced like long-lost friends, their laughter like shattering glass. Emilia's blood ran cold. Victoria knew. This wasn't just an affair, it was a conspiracy. The party regrouped, the music swelled. But the dynamic had changed. Chloe was the new center of gravity. Emilia felt a hand on her arm. It was Andrew Vance, her father-in-law. His face was, as always, unreadable, his eyes sharp. "Emilia," he said, his voice a low rumble. "You look pale. Are you enjoying the party?" It's a lovely party, Andrew. Happy birthday." He nodded, studying her. "That dress? It's a sensible choice. Practical." Emilia couldn't tell if it was an insult or a compliment. "Thank you." "My son," Andrew said, his gaze drifting to where Jason was now laughing with Victoria and Chloe, "likes loud things. He thinks they signify strength. He's wrong. A storm is loud. A foundation is quiet." He gave her a strange, long look before turning away. "Enjoy the evening, my dear." Emilia was left to ponder his cryptic words. A foundation is quiet. The inevitable confrontation happened an hour later. Emilia was attempting to navigate the hallway toward the powder room when Chloe stepped out of the shadows, blocking her path. "Well, well, Emilia, isn't it?" Chloe said, her voice dripping with manufactured sweetness. She was holding 2 full glasses of champagne. "Excuse me, Chloe," Emilia said, trying to sidestep her. "Oh, I'm just so clumsy." Chloe's arm jerked, and the entire contents of 1 champagne glass, sticky, cold, and bubbling, cascaded down the front of Emilia's navy blue dress. Emilia gasped, the shock of the cold taking her breath away. The music seemed to stop. Everyone in the hallway turned to look. "Oh my God!" Chloe shrieked, her hand flying to her mouth in a perfect pantomime of surprise. "I am so sorry. It's just... This dress is such a dark color. I almost didn't see you there. You just blend right into the wallpaper, don't you?" Laughter, thin and cruel, rippled from Victoria, who had been watching from the doorway. Tears of humiliation pricked Emilia's eyes. She was soaked, sticky, and the center of a mocking spectacle. "What's going on here?" Jason's voice boomed. He pushed through the small crowd and saw Emilia, dripping, and Chloe, looking apologetic. "Jason, baby, it was a total accident," Chloe cooed, rushing to his side and placing a proprietary hand on his arm. "I was bringing you a drink and I just bumped right into her." Emilia looked at her husband, her eyes pleading. "Say something. Defend me, please." Jason looked from Emilia's ruined dress to Chloe's perfect pouting face. He sighed, annoyed. "Emilia, really? Don't make a scene. It was an accident. Go upstairs and change. You're drawing attention." The world tilted. He hadn't defended her. He had blamed her. "Yes, Emilia," Chloe purred, her eyes glinting with triumph. "Go. Change. We'll handle things down here." Emilia stood frozen for a moment, the silence of the hallway punctuated by the drip, drip, drip of champagne on the antique Persian rug. She looked at Jason, her husband, the man who was supposed to be her partner. He wouldn't even meet her eyes. With as much dignity as she could muster, she turned and walked up the grand staircase, each step an agony of shame. But as she climbed, the shame began to curdle, hardening into something else. Something cold, something strong. It was a foundation. Emilia didn't go to her bedroom. The thought of that cold, silent room, of Jason's Tom Ford suits hanging next to her sale rack dresses, was unbearable. Instead, she went to the bathroom, adjoining the guest wing, dabbing at the sticky mess on her dress with wet paper towels. The stain wouldn't come out. It was ruined. A metaphor. She was just about to give up when she heard voices from the room next door. The old house had a network of disused service hallways, and the ventilation grate in the bathroom often carried sound from the adjacent library. Jason's voice. And Chloe's. Emilia's heart stopped. She pressed her ear to the cold brass grate. "You shouldn't have done that, Chloe," Jason was saying, but his voice wasn't angry. It was amused. "In the middle of the hall? My father saw." "Oh, relax," Chloe's voice purred. It was perfect. It established the new hierarchy. The mousy little librarian gets soaked, and the queen stays dry. Besides, she deserved it. "Did you see that dress? My maid has better clothes." "She's still my wife. For now," Jason said, a note of weak protest. "For now. That's the key, baby." There was a sound of a glass setting down. "Did you talk to him? Is the announcement happening tonight? Because I'm not going to be the other woman forever, Jason. My father is already asking questions about us. I need a timeline." Emilia bit her lip so hard she tasted blood. A timeline. They had planned this. Yes, yes, Jason said, his voice eager, placating. After the cake, he's making his speech. He's handing me the keys. The full inheritance. Vance Industries. Hawthorne. Once the ink is dry, I'm secure. I won't need to. You know. Keep appearances. And her. I'll give her a settlement, something small, enough to go back to Oregon or wherever she crawled out of. She'll sign anything I put in front of her. She's weak, Chloe. She has no idea how this world works. She still believes in love. Jason laughed, a sound that made Emilia's stomach heave. And the house? Chloe's voice became possessive. This house is everything. I've already been talking to an interior designer from Architectural Digest. We're going to gut this entire wing. All this dark, heavy wood. It's depressing. I want white marble, gold fixtures. We'll tear out her pathetic little reading nook and put in a champagne bar. Whatever you want, my love, Jason said. Once it's mine, it's ours. In 6 months, Emilia will be a distant memory, just a bad-smelling, book-reading memory. Good. Now kiss me, and this time, make it convincing. You were so stiff at the door. Emilia heard the distinct, wet sound of a kiss, followed by Chloe's light giggle. Emilia pulled back from the grate, her body trembling so violently she had to grip the marble sink to stay upright. It wasn't just an affair. It was a hostile takeover of her life. They weren't just betraying her. They were plotting against her, laughing at her, planning her eviction from a life she hadn't even wanted. She looked at her reflection. The woman staring back was a ghost, pale, tear-streaked, with a ruined dress and a broken heart, the beige mouse they'd all dismissed. She stayed there for a long time. The house, Hawthorne Estate, which had always felt like her enemy, seemed to be whispering to her. A foundation is quiet. She thought about leaving, sneaking out the back, calling a cab, and disappearing, going back to Oregon, to her old life. But the thought of them, Jason and Chloe, clinking glasses in her champagne bar, laughing in her library, ignited a spark. It wasn't shame anymore. It was rage, a cold, pure, righteous rage. She splashed cold water on her face, washing away the tears. She smoothed her hair. She looked at the stain on her dress. So what? It was a battle scar. She would not run. She would not hide. She would go back downstairs, stained dress and all. She would watch her husband's coronation. She would stand there and be a witness to her own destruction. It was the last thing she could do. She walked out of the bathroom and headed not for the stairs, but for the main hall. She didn't know it, but she was walking toward the true battlefield. The real war wasn't for Jason's affection. It was for the house, and it was about to begin. Emilia re-entered the great hall with her head held high. The champagne stain was a dark, ugly map on her dress, and she didn't care. The first person who saw her was Victoria, who raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow and whispered something to a friend. They both snickered. Emilia ignored them. She saw Jason and Chloe standing near the massive fireplace. They were separated by a few feet, behaving, but the energy between them was a tangible, illicit current. Chloe was glowing, her red dress like a victory flag. The staff was wheeling out a massive, multi-tiered cake. The orchestra leader tapped his stand. Friends, family, esteemed colleagues, a voice boomed. It was Jason, tapping a spoon against his glass. He had taken the liberty of commandeering the spotlight. If I could have your attention. The room quieted. Jason walked to the center, a confident smile plastered on his face. We are all here tonight for one reason, to celebrate a great man, a titan. My father, Andrew Vance. He gestured to Andrew, who was seated at a large central table, watching his son with that same unreadable expression. My father built an empire on strength, vision, and tradition, Jason continued. His voice was smooth, practiced. He was giving the speech he'd been rehearsing in his head for years. And as he reaches this incredible milestone, 70 years, it's time for us to look to the future, to the continuation of that legacy. He was doing it. He was actually preempting his father's announcement. Emilia saw Andrew's jaw tighten, just slightly. "So, I'd like to make a toast," Jason said, raising his glass. "To the next 70 years, to the future of Vance Industries, and to the future of Hawthorne Estate." "To the future," a few people echoed. As the applause died down, Chloe stepped forward. "I'd like to make a toast, too." A murmur went through the crowd. Who was this woman, in her loud dress, inserting herself into a family moment? But Jason just smiled, motioning for her to speak. Chloe glided to his side, taking the glass from his hand and taking a sip before continuing. A shockingly intimate, territorial gesture. "I'm Chloe Donovan," she said, her voice silky. "And I'm a new friend of the family. I haven't been around for long, but I am just so impressed by everything the Vances have built, especially this house." She turned, addressing the room, but her eyes locked onto Emilia, who was standing alone near the doorway. "It takes a special kind of person to manage a legacy like this," Chloe poured, her eyes glittering with malice. "It's such a shame when a beautiful, powerful house is underappreciated, when its potential is wasted, when it's left in the hands of someone who just doesn't fit." The air grew thick. This was no longer a toast. It was an execution. "A house like Hawthorne needs vision," Chloe continued, her voice rising in confidence. "It needs passion. It needs someone who isn't afraid to tear down the old, dusty parts and build something new, something fabulous." She was walking slowly, circling the center of the room, a predator on the hunt. She stopped directly in front of Emilia. The two women were only feet apart. "It needs a woman who isn't beige." The room was utterly silent. Emilia could feel the stares of 100 wealthy, judgmental guests burning into her. And then, the final, brutal, devastating blow. Chloe smiled, a wide, shark-like smile. "Oh, Emilia, darling, you're still here? I'm so sorry. With that stain, I honestly thought you were the help." A collective, sharp intake of breath. Victoria actually covered her mouth to hide a laugh. "I mean, it's an easy mistake to make, right?" Chloe looked to the crowd for support. "She just blends. You know, I was just saying to Jason, this house needs a mistress. And I don't mean—" She paused. "Well, you know, I mean a mistress of the house. Someone strong. Someone who belongs." She reached out and flicked a piece of imaginary lint off Emilia's stained dress. "Don't worry, honey. I'm sure your shift is almost over." This was it. The absolute, bottomless pit of humiliation. Emilia stood there, paralyzed, her blood roaring in her ears. She looked at Jason, who was standing by the fireplace, a smirk playing on his lips. He was enjoying this. This was his revenge for her being beige, for not being the queen he wanted. She had been reduced to nothing, a non-entity, a servant in her own home. All her rage, all her pain, all the swallowed insults from the past 5 years suddenly coalesced into a single, sharp point. "Get your hand off me," Emilia said. Her voice wasn't loud. It wasn't a shriek. It was low, cold, and vibrating with a power that surprised even her. Chloe, startled, pulled her hand back. I heard you," Emilia said, her eyes boring into Chloe's. "I heard you, And I heard my husband in the library, planning. The colour drained from Jason's face. Chloe's smirk faltered. You're crazy, Jason stuttered, stepping forward. She's hysterical. Am I? Emilia said, turning her icy gaze on him. Am I hysterical? Or am I just not beige enough to keep quiet anymore? You, she pointed at Jason, are a spineless, adulterous coward. And you, she pointed at Chloe, are a vulgar, cruel home-wrecker. The party had just become a play, and everyone had front-row seats. How dare you? Chloe shrieked, her mask of sophistication shattering. You're a nothing, a charity case. Jason is mine. This house is mine. Is it? Emilia shot back. You seem very confident about a house that doesn't belong to you. Oh, but it will be, Jason roared, finding his voice. He stormed over, grabbing Emilia's arm. You're embarrassing me. You're embarrassing my father. No, Jason, Emilia said, yanking her arm free. You're embarrassing yourself. You want this house so badly? You think it's your coronation? You're a fool. You're both fools. That's enough, Jason shouted. You are done. You hear me? Get out of my house. Your house? Emilia repeated, a strange, bitter laugh escaping her. That's what you think this is? Your house? Of course it's my house, Jason yelled, his face purple with rage. It's my birthright. It's my legacy. And after Dad's speech tonight, it's mine. Jason. The voice cut through the chaos like a surgeon's scalpel. It was one word, spoken without volume, but it silenced the entire room. Andrew Vance, the patriarch, who had not moved from his seat, who had watched the entire grotesque spectacle unfold, finally stood up. He placed his napkin on the table. He looked at his son, at Chloe, and then at Emilia. His face was a mask of profound, glacial disappointment. Sit down, Jason, Andrew said. You're making a fool of yourself. And you, Miss Donovan, you have mistaken my son's arrogance for power, a common and fatal mistake. The real king had finally taken the throne, and judgment was about to be rendered. The silence in the great hall was absolute. The orchestra was frozen, boughs hovering over strings. The guests, moments ago reveling in the drama, now looked terrified. Andrew Vance had a presence that didn't require volume. It simply demanded obedience. Jason's face was a mottled wreck of fury and fear. But, Dad, she's hysterical. She ruined the party. Andrew ignored him, his gaze fixed on Chloe. Miss Donovan, you said this house needs a mistress. You spoke of vision. Tell me, what is your vision? Chloe, clearly unnerved by the patriarch's focus, tried to regain her composure. She flashed a smile, the one that worked on billionaires and politicians. Mr. Vance, I just meant, it needs a fresh perspective, a modern touch, someone who understands its potential for entertaining. I see, Andrew said. And you believe Emilia, my daughter-in-law, does not. You called her help. You mocked her dress. You assumed she was disposable. It was a misunderstanding, Chloe stammered, looking to Jason for help. But Jason was silent, staring at his father, realizing he had lost control of the narrative. There is no misunderstanding, Andrew said, his voice flat. He turned his cold, appraising eyes on his son. Jason, you stood by. You watched this viper, he used the word with surgical precision, publicly humiliate your wife. In my home, on my birthday. She's just a librarian, Dad, Jason burst out, the words tumbling out in a torrent of long-held resentment. She doesn't belong here. She never has. She's holding me back. Chloe understands this world. She's an asset. Emilia is a liability. A liability, Andrew repeated, nodding slowly. He looked sad. I see. You're right. A liability, an anchor, weighing you down. All you've ever wanted is this house, isn't it? The status. The power you think comes with it. You're like a child demanding a toy, not understanding its value, only that it's shiny. I deserve it, Jason shouted, his composure completely gone. I've worked for you my whole life. I've done everything you asked. It's my birthright. Birthright? Andrew mused, walking slowly toward the center of the room. He stopped in front of the grand fireplace, under the portrait of his own stern-faced grandfather. Let me tell you about birthright. Your great-grandfather built this house not with money, but with grit. He built a shipping empire from nothing. He earned this. I expanded that empire. I protected it. He turned to Jason. And you? You've done nothing but spend it. You've lived your entire life on a foundation you didn't build, and you have the arrogance to call it your own. He then looked at Emilia. She was standing, tearless, her back straight. The stain on her dress looked like a shield. 5 years ago, Andrew said, his voice softening just a fraction. You brought this woman into our family. I was skeptical. She was not of our world. She was quiet. She was kind. She read books. She was, as you so elegantly put it, a librarian. He paused, letting the silence hang. I watched you, Jason. I watched you chip away at her. I watched you mock her interests, control her money, and drain the light from her eyes. I watched you treat her as a liability. And all the while, I watched her. I watched her endure. I watched her be the only person in this family who ever asked me about my day, not about my stock portfolio. I watched her treat the staff, the help, with a dignity you've never shown anyone. Andrew looked back at his son. You see, Jason, I've known about Ms. Donovan for 6 months. I've known about your late-night client dinners. I've known about your plans. The blood drained from Jason's face. Chloe looked like she was going to be sick. I, Jason stammered. You thought this party was your coronation, Andrew continued, his voice hardening into steel. You thought I was an old fool, ready to hand over his kingdom. You were wrong. This party was a test, a final test. He looked at Jason. You failed. He looked at Chloe. And you, Ms. Donovan, are a symptom of his disease, greed, hubris, a complete lack of character. But the house! Jason was frantic now, a cornered animal. The announcement! You said you were handing over the estate. I did, Andrew said, and I am. But you see, Jason, you've made a critical error in your calculations, a fundamental assumption that has been wrong for 5 years. Andrew Vance looked at his son, his mistress, and the entire silent room of guests. You assumed, Andrew said, his voice ringing with clarity, that this house was yours to inherit. A stunned, disbelieving silence fell over the great hall. Jason's face was a mask of confusion. What? What are you talking about? Jason laughed, a short, sharp, terrified sound. Of course it's mine to inherit. It's the Vance estate. I'm your only son. It's tradition. Tradition, Andrew said, is for people who respect it. You respect nothing but your own reflection. You've been so obsessed with getting this house, you never bothered to check the paperwork. Andrew turned and nodded to a man standing near the back, a man Emilia hadn't noticed. He was in a simple dark suit, holding a briefcase. Mr. Harrison, the family's oldest legal counsel. Mr. Harrison, Andrew called out, if you would. Mr. Harrison stepped forward, his face grim. He opened his briefcase. Dad, what is this? Jason demanded. This is a party, not a legal deposition. You're humiliating me." "No, Jason," Andrew said, his voice cutting like a razor. "You humiliated yourself. You and this creature," he gestured to Chloe, "humiliated my daughter. I am simply clarifying the facts." "What facts?" Jason shrieked. "The fact," Andrew said, his voice dropping, "that you, Jason Vance, do not own, have never owned, and will never own one single brick of Hawthorne Estate." The gasp from the crowd was a physical force. Jason swayed as if struck. That's not possible," Chloe whispered, her calculations running a mile a minute, all coming up with error messages. "The family. The name." "The name?" Andrew scoffed. "The name is my own. I can do with my assets as I please. And 5 years ago, I made a decision. I saw the man my son was. I saw his weakness, his greed, his utter lack of a moral compass. I knew he would one day do, well, exactly this. He would find a woman just as shallow and grasping as he is, and he would try to discard the best thing that ever happened to him." He turned his gaze to Emilia. She was trembling, not from fear, but from a dawning, impossible realization. "I knew," Andrew continued, speaking to Emilia now, "that this marriage was a mistake for you. But I also saw your strength, your character, your foundation. You remember our conversation, my dear. A foundation is quiet." Emilia nodded, her throat too tight to speak. "I couldn't protect you from my son's heartlessness," Andrew said, his voice full of a rare, raw regret. "But I could protect your future. I could give you a fortress. I could give you the one thing he wanted most, the one thing he was certain he would get, the one thing he would use to discard you." "No." Jason was shaking his head, backing away. "No, you wouldn't." "Jason," Andrew said, "you always underestimated me. But more importantly, you underestimated her." Andrew turned to his daughter-in-law. His face, for the first time in 5 years, broke into a small, sad but triumphant smile. "Emilia Vance, my son is correct about one thing. This party is about an announcement. It's about the future of Hawthorne Estate." He took a step toward her. He looked at the ruined dress, the stained fabric, and the strong, defiant woman wearing it. "My dear," he said, his voice loud enough for every person in the room to hear. "I'm so sorry you had to endure this, but I needed the world to see what I see. I needed them to see what he is, and what you are." He paused, taking a deep breath, and delivered the final, devastating blow to his son's world. "This house, Hawthorne Estate, it isn't, and never was, Jason's to inherit. I signed the deed over 5 years ago as a wedding gift. It is, and has been, for this entire time, in a protected trust. Emilia, my dear, you are the sole and rightful owner of this mansion." The world stopped. For a full 10 seconds, the only sound was the distant crash of the ocean waves outside. The 100 most powerful people in the state stood frozen, champagne glasses halfway to their mouths, their brains trying to process the impossible. Chloe Donovan was the first to break. Her face, which had been a mask of triumph, then confusion, collapsed into a grotesque portrait of pure, unadulterated horror. The prize she had been playing for, the house, the legacy, the money, wasn't just off the table. It had been given to the one person she had tried to destroy. Jason was ashen. He looked like he had been physically struck. That's a lie," he screamed. "You're senile. You're crazy. That's not legal." "Oh, it's perfectly legal, Mr. Vance, Jr." Mr. Harrison, the lawyer, stepped forward, his voice calm and professional. He held up a thick, leather-bound document. "This is a copy of the deed, filed with the state of Massachusetts on October 14th, 5 years ago. The Hawthorne Trust. The sole beneficiary and trustee, Mrs. Emilia Middleton Vance. It's ironclad. It was, as Mr. Vance Sr. stated, a wedding gift. Mr. Harrison looked at Emilia. Mrs. Vance, the trust was structured to be quiet. That is, it would not become public knowledge, nor would you be burdened with its management until one of two triggers: Mr. Andrew Vance's death or a personal crisis as determined by Mr. Vance Sr. and the legal team. He looked at the chaos around him. I believe tonight qualifies. Emilia's knees gave out. She grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. Me? She thought. I own Hawthorne? It wasn't a gift. It was a weapon, a shield, a fortress. You bitch! Chloe shrieked, her voice cracking. She lunged not at Emilia, but at Jason. You told me you had this. You told me you were the heir. You're nothing. You're a liability. She used his own word against him, her nails raking at his bespoke suit. You're a penniless, pathetic, lying loser. Get off me, Jason yelled, shoving her away. Chloe stumbled, her red Valentino dress catching on the leg of a chair, and she went down in an ungraceful heap of silk and fury. Jason turned, his eyes wild, to his father. You did this! You ruined me! You gave my house, my birthright, to her. It was never your birthright, Jason, Andrew said, his voice filled with a terrible, final sadness. It was my property, and I gave it to the only person in this family who has earned my respect. I gave it to the only other Vance in this room. He walked over to Emilia, past his sputtering son and his son's sobbing mistress. He stood in front of his daughter-in-law. Emilia, he said gently, what happens next is entirely up to you. Emilia looked at her father-in-law. She looked at the cowering, furious man she had married. She looked at the woman who had tried to annihilate her. And she looked at the room full of vultures, as she now thought of them, who were watching her, waiting. They had all seen her as the beige mouse, the help, the liability. Now she was the most powerful person in the room. She was the mistress of Hawthorne Estate. She stood up straight. The cold, quiet rage from the library had been forged into something new. It was steel. She took a deep breath. Her voice, when it came out, was not the voice of the mousy librarian. It was the voice of the woman who owned the ground they were standing on. Mr. Harrison, she said, her voice clear and carrying across the hall. Yes, Mrs. Vance. As the owner of this property, I believe I have the right to remove trespassers. Is that correct? A small, grim smile touched the lawyer's lips. That is absolutely correct, Mrs. Vance. Emilia nodded. She turned her head, her gaze sweeping past the cowering Jason, past the crying Chloe. She looked directly at her husband. Jason, she said. He flinched. Emilia, baby, listen. We can talk about this. This is crazy. You don't even like this house. You're right, Emilia said. I never have. It was always your house. Cold, empty, full of shadows. She took a step toward him. But you know, Chloe gave me an idea. It does need a new vision. It needs to be gutted. All the dark, heavy, depressing things need to be removed. She stopped, right in front of him. You and Ms. Donovan, Emilia said, her voice dropping to an icy whisper, have 1 hour to pack your personal effects. Anything left behind will be considered a donation. You can't, Jason sputtered. I'm your husband. Mr. Harrison, Emilia said, turning back to the lawyer. Please begin divorce proceedings first thing in the morning, on the grounds of adultery and I'm sure you can think of a few other things." "With pleasure, Mrs. Vance." Emilia then looked at the 2 security guards who had been discreetly standing by the main door. "Security?" The large men stepped forward. "Yes, ma'am?" Emilia pointed. "Miss Donovan is a trespasser. Please escort her from my property. Immediately." "You can't do this!" Chloe screamed, scrambling to her feet, her dress torn. I'll sue you." "On what grounds?" Emilia asked, bored. "Spoiled champagne. Get her out." The guards grabbed Chloe by the arms. She began to wail, a truly pathetic sound. "Jason, don't let her do this. Jason!" But Jason was staring at his father, his world completely shattered. "And security," Emilia added as they were dragging the fighting, screaming Chloe to the door. "Please, do assist Mr. Vance in packing his things. I want him and all of his belongings off my property within the hour. After that, he will be trespassing as well." Jason finally looked at her. The hatred in his eyes was pure, but it was mixed with a new, delicious emotion. Fear. He had been checkmated by the librarian, by the beige mouse. "And as for the rest of you," Emilia said, turning to the stunned guests, "the party is over. Thank you for celebrating Andrew's birthday. Please, get out." The exodus was a thing of grotesque beauty. It was not a polite departure. It was a rout. The 100 most powerful people in the state, who had arrived with the supreme confidence of their class, now scrambled for the exit like mice fleeing a fire. There was no more polite mingling, no air-kissing goodbyes. Coats were grabbed from the stunned staff without a word of thanks. Husbands grabbed their wives by the elbow, whispering urgently, "We need to leave. Now." Emilia watched them go, a silent, unmoving statue by the fireplace. She saw Victoria, her face a mask of chalky, furious white. Victoria didn't look at Emilia, nor at her father. She simply stared at the space where her brother had been, as if she was seeing the ghost of her own social and financial future. She turned and walked out, her high heels clicking a furious, staccato rhythm on the marble floor, the only sound in the room. Within 10 minutes, the great hall, which had been brimming with noise, champagne, and artificial laughter, was a cavern of silence. It was over. The debris of the battle lay scattered, a half-eaten, 7-tiered birthday cake, dozens of abandoned, half-full glasses, crushed napkins, and the lingering, cloying scent of Chloe's perfume. Then, from the driveway, came the sound of a high-performance engine screaming to life, followed by the angry squeal of tires on gravel as Chloe Donovan's red Ferrari fishtailed out of the estate, disappearing into the night. A few moments later, a more humiliating sound, the heavy, thudding thump, thump, thump from the grand staircase. "Jason." Emilia let out a breath she felt she had been holding for 5 years. She was still trembling, a fine, high-frequency vibration of adrenaline and shock. She felt hollowed out, yet more solid than she had ever been. "Well," Andrew said, breaking the profound silence. He walked, with the unhurried pace of a man who has just won a decades-long chess match, over to the bar. He ignored the champagne. He pulled out a dark, heavy, crystal decanter and 2 glasses. Scotch, 30-year-old. It's a celebratory drink, though I suppose it's also a medicinal one. He poured 2 generous measures. The amber liquid was dark, almost red. "You look like you've earned this, Emilia." He handed the heavy glass to her. Her hand was shaking so much the liquid shivered, threatening to spill. She had to use her other hand to steady it. She had never been a Scotch drinker. She took a sip. The liquid fire hit the back of her throat, burned a path straight to her stomach, and then exploded in warmth. It was brutal, complex, and utterly grounding. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was a hoarse whisper. Mr. Harrison, the lawyer, quietly began to pack his briefcase. "Mr. Vance, Mrs. Vance, if you'll excuse me, I believe my part in this evening is concluded." "Thank you, Robert," Andrew said. "You were impeccable as always. See him out, will you?" He nodded to one of the two remaining security guards. When the lawyer had gone, Emilia turned to her father-in-law. The Scotch had given her a sliver of courage. "Why?" she asked, the single word raw. "Why, Andrew?" He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Why what, my dear? Why give you the house?" "No," she said, shaking her head, the anger she had felt earlier returning, but this time it was directed at him. "Why let it happen? You watched. You sat there and watched that woman pour champagne on me. You watched my husband, your son, humiliate me. You watched them call me help. You let me stand there and be torn to shreds in front of all these people. Why put me through that? You could have just told me. You could have stopped it." Andrew looked down into his glass. He swirled the scotch. "Because, Emilia," he said, his voice low and full of a terrible ancient sadness, "if I had stopped it, you would have been rescued. I didn't want you to be rescued. I wanted you to win." She stared at him, uncomprehending. "Do you think I enjoyed it?" he asked, his gaze snapping up to meet hers. "That was my son, my blood, my legacy, making a mockery of himself and his vows. But I have known for years, what he is. He is weak. He is a coward. He is a bully. And he would never, ever respect anyone he perceived as weaker than himself." He took a step closer. "If I had stepped in, I would have been the strong one. I would have been the hero. And you would have remained the poor, mousy librarian I saved. He would have hated you for it. He would have blamed you for his disinheritance. And you would have looked at me as your savior, but you never would have known your own strength." He gestured to the empty room. "Tonight I didn't save you. You saved yourself. I just gave you the weapons. I needed him to underestimate you. I needed everyone to underestimate you. I needed him to push you so far that you had no choice but to push back, using the power you didn't even know you had. Disinheriting him would have been a punishment. This was an execution, and you were the one who, quite rightly, pulled the trigger." The thump, thump, thump was on the main landing now. Jason. He was descending, dragging two oversized, monogrammed Louis Vuitton suitcases. The two security guards, the only guests left, followed, carrying two more. Jason's face was a mottled, purple-white mask of pure, undiluted hatred. His hair was disheveled. His bespoke suit was wrinkled. He looked, for the first time, like a common, defeated man. He didn't look at Emilia. He didn't look at his father. He marched toward the front door, a man intent on a single purpose. He stopped at the threshold, his hand on the great oak handle. He turned. His eyes, when they met Emilia's, were poison. "You'll never get away with this," he spat, his voice trembling with rage. "You think you're so smart? You think you've won?" "It does rather look that way, doesn't it?" Emilia said, surprised at the cold, steady calm of her own voice. The scotch was working. Or perhaps this was just her now. "I'll fight this," he shrieked, his voice cracking. "I'll get a lawyer. I'll take you for everything. I'll tell the papers you're a gold digger, that you tricked my senile old father." "Senile?" Andrew said, raising an eyebrow. "Mr. Harrison, who just left, would be happy to provide the courts with the 3 separate recent psychiatric evaluations that confirm my mental state is, and I quote, distressingly sharp." So do try that, Jason. It will be amusing." "And as for me being a gold digger," Emilia said, taking a slow step toward him, "you are, at this moment, a man with no job, because I assume, Father, that his position at Vance Industries is also—" "Terminated," Andrew said, "effective immediately, as is his access to the family credit lines and trust funds." "No job," Emilia continued, "no home, and as of tomorrow, a pending divorce on the grounds of adultery, with over 100 witnesses to your, what was it, new hierarchy. So, Jason, you go to the papers. You tell them your version. Tell them how the mousy librarian you were cheating on ended up with everything, and you ended up with 4 suitcases on the gravel. You tell them, and you see who they paint as the fool. You see who they believe." She stopped, just feet from him. "Your name," she said, her voice dropping to an icy whisper. "The Vance name you were so proud of. It's about to be the only thing you have left. And as of tonight, it's thoroughly, completely, and publicly tarnished. By you." His face crumpled. The rage was replaced by something else, a vast, bottomless, pathetic terror. He had nothing. "Now," she said, her voice final, "get out of my house." He stared at her for 1 second longer. He saw no pity, no lingering affection. Nothing. He saw a stranger. He yanked the door open and stormed out into the night, his expensive suitcases bumping and dragging on the stone steps. The heavy door slammed shut, the sound echoing through the hall like a gunshot. The final punctuation. He was gone. Emilia let out the breath she had been holding. She turned and looked at the great hall. Her house. "So," she said, walking back to the fire and looking up at the portrait of Andrew's grandfather. "What now?" "Now," Andrew said, a rare, small smile touching his lips. "You redecorate. I believe I heard Ms. Donovan suggest white marble and gold fixtures. She seemed to have vision." Emilia laughed, a real, loud, clear laugh. It was the first time such a sound had been heard in Hawthorne Estate for a very long time, and it felt incredible. "I don't think so," she said. "But she did give me an idea." She walked over to the corner of the room, her reading nook that Chloe had planned to gut. She wanted to tear this out. Put in a champagne bar. Emilia ran her hand along the carved mahogany shelving. "It's a good wall for it." She looked back at Andrew, a mischievous glint in her eye. "But I think I'd rather have the library. A real one, floor to ceiling, with one of those rolling ladders. We can put a no vulgarian sign on the door, and a strict, permanent ban on anyone named Jason or Chloe." "I like that," Andrew said, walking over and clinking his glass against hers. "A foundation, Emilia. You're the new foundation of this house, and it is in much, much better hands." He raised his glass. "Happy birthday to me." Emilia raised her glass in return. "Happy birthday, Andrew." She stood by the great window, the empty Scotch glass in her hand, and looked out at the dark, churning ocean. The house was quiet. For the first time, it didn't feel cold. It didn't feel like a prison. It wasn't Jason's house, or Andrew's, or his grandfather's. It was hers, and she was finally, terrifyingly, beautifully free. It felt like home. And just like that, Emilia went from the beige mouse, the help, the liability, to the rightful owner of Hawthorne Estate. She didn't just get the house, she got her freedom, her power, and her dignity back. The Vances learned a hard lesson. Never underestimate the quiet ones. The foundation is always stronger than the storm. What do you think Emilia should do next? Should she sell the mansion and travel the world, finally free? Or should she stay and build a new life, a new legacy, right there in those hallowed halls? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What was your favorite moment of karmic justice? Was it Jason's face when the deed was revealed, or Chloe's humiliating exit? If you loved this story, and I know you did, please don't forget to show your support by hitting that like button. It really helps the channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear a story of a powerful comeback, and most importantly, subscribe for more real-life drama and incredible stories every single week. Click that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next story.